tonight. Very esteemed guest, one of the best players in the world, and hopefully, what is this? The second year you were champion last year?
Yeah,
The
I've
ITC
been
series?
twice. I
Yeah.
think I'm the only two-time ITC champ.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a amazing feat to do. But yeah, today we're just gonna do a little interview with him, going over how you got into the hobby. What was your first introduction to Warhammer 40k? How did you personally get into it? Did you start with friends?
Oh yeah, when I was I forget what age, but grade school, very young. My friend had a bunch of Blood Angel models, so instantly hooked. Once I started reading the lore, this was around third edition, and I'm a big fan of history. I have a PhD in history, and I also love Greco-Roman mythology. So because 40k takes all of that together, tosses it in with sci-fi, which I also love, it was really natural when I read the kind of lore of the third edition rulebook, that big giant tome, that this was going to be something I was excited about. So started with Blood Angels, that was my first army, and then quickly moved over to Grey Knights when they were pure metal, and loved that army. Had the old Demon Hunters Codex. I am a huge fan of the Inquisition in general, but specifically the Grey Knights, so the Ordo Malleus, and that's kind of where I started, third to fifth edition. Didn't play competitively, just casual garage hammer with my brother and my cousin, and enjoyed reading the lore and stuff, but never played too much. And then I took a break, went off to college, and ended up skipping 6th and 7th editions, which apparently were completely bonkers and off the wall. And
Oh
from what I've
man.
heard, those were the editions to miss.
So those
So
were the editions I started in. I started the start of sixth into fifth, and played all through that. Played seventh with like the Annihilation Force, the Skyhammer Annihilation Force, and all of that, where you got free transports, free Razorbacks for Space
wild.
Marines. Yeah, literally the Wild West of those times. I only recently started getting into competitive in ninth edition.
Nice. So I started with the second year of 8th edition, so I even skipped the Index Hammer
Oh,
days.
okay. So you got
I was
into it
like,
with the Codex. You didn't even play when nobody had like special rules or anything.
exactly. I started with the Grey Knight Codex in 8th edition.
So,
And
so sorry. How many years have you been playing competitively? Would you say then?
that was the second year of 8th edition, was my first year competitively, and
Oh my gosh.
that is the year I won the first ITC.
I was gonna say it because I was gonna say that can't
With
be
Tau,
that long
though.
ago.
Yeah, so I played
Oh
Grey
my
Knights a little bit
gosh.
and was like, man, this book is just not awesome. So I
Yeah.
gravitated to Tau, which was my brother's favorite faction, and my motivation there was to like have the two armies that both of us really like, accessible if we wanted to play. And
Yeah.
then I started going to some local tournaments in Florida. Florida has a really rich RTT scene, and that's where I started playing against people like John Lennon and the Brohammer team, and eventually was able to join the team. I did pretty well at RTTs, and then was going I went 4-1 at my first GT, and 5-1 at my first major, and then the first super major I went to was Nova, and I won that one. And from
Yeah.
there, I had like a really hot streak in the final second half of the season, and was able to overtake Jim Vessel to win the ITC. And then, of course, COVID happened, so there weren't too many tournaments. And I
Yeah.
came back with the last year's season, and took it by storm, mostly with AdMech, but a little bit, one big event with Yukari as well.
If I remember
Just to prove the
correctly,
point.
in eighth edition, they were one of the first codexes after the Index, right? They were the second or the third. If
Yeah,
I'm not
Grey
mistaken.
Knights were one of the first
Yeah,
books.
they were not stellar at that time. They're a
Around
lot better nowadays.
the
Um,
new ninth edition Codex is 1,000 times better than it was in 8th edition, which is true for
yes.
almost every faction. Honestly, they've done a much better job in ninth.
Um, that's so crazy that the first year you just dove into it and you just ended up winning the ITC. That's so
I
crazy.
mean, it's thanks to playing against a lot of great
Oh,
players
I
down here in Florida. Like, the only way to get good quickly at this game is to get beat repetitively by much better players, and
yep.
then that's how you learn. That's how I learned.
Yes.
And
Uh,
then and then I was able to beat John in the super majors.
oh my gosh, that's so crazy. What a wild year. And then what was your if I remember correctly, how many tournaments did you go to during last year? Didn't
Last
you
year, exactly the minimum, 6.
exactly six?
I
Wow.
went to precisely because I was
Yes.
like, I won in my first year. Like, that's hard to top, winning the ITC in your first year. What can I do that's like equally impressive?
Only
Winning
go
it
to
in
six
exactly
events.
6 events.
Oh,
So I
and
had to win I didn't have to win LVO. I had to like finish top 8,
you had a
and then
place,
I was pretty
yes.
much guaranteed. And then once Manny lost the round and then I kept winning, it was guaranteed. So, end up taking that. That means I won LVO back to back, which is also cool.
Yep. You didn't you win all of your? Did you win every event that you went to last year, or did you just place in all of the events?
I did win. I think I won every single one.
I think you won all six. I
Yeah,
looked
'cause
a little
I
bit
won.
into your ITC history, and I
Yeah,
thought
so
it was a win in every event. And I was like, this man
was-
went to 6 events and won them all.
It was well, not ATC. It was the Las Vegas Teams event
Yep.
with the Art of War team that we won. It was 3 GW events. That's 4 LVO, and then what was the last one that I won? Embarrassing, I forget.
I looked at it earlier today. I can't remember. It was you won LVO. There was another major event you went to, which is, oh my gosh, I had it up on my screen just a minute ago.
Usually I don't forget things like this, but
I know.
I can't.
It's
I can't
okay.
think of it.
Yeah, no worries. But no,
Yeah.
that's so crazy. Just yep. I loved hearing the stories of when you guys were talking about you going to LVO, that you weren't even convinced that you were going to end up going to LVO. You hadn't had any practice against Custodes, which was like the big haymaker at the time. This is before AOC. This is before all of the crazy stuff went on. And you were just like, it's fine. We'll be fine. Just showed up and
I took the
killed
army
it.
I was most practiced with.
You
And
took
most people. Yeah, I
AdMech,
took
right?
Mars AdMech. Yep.
Yep.
So it was a little bit different than the list I had been running because the meta had changed. AdMech had changed a lot. But I was very confident in AdMech just being a good faction for my playstyle. And I felt that AdMech gets an advantage on player place terrain because you can create just enough defense to keep your army safe, and then you can create amazing firing angles, which kind of played out over the course of the game. Custodes is a tricky one, but man, Ruststalkers just rip up Custodes.
Ruststalkers.
So I loaded up my army with Ruststalkers and tried to do the best I could. But honestly, if I was running a Grippin, I'd have an easier time.
I can't believe they made Ruststalkers cheapers and not the Infiltrators.
Not Infiltrator?
Yeah.
I honestly don't know what they were doing. Like, it was fine to take away most of the nerfs, but not to buff Cult Mechanicus stuff. Nobody runs Cult Mechanicus. There's half a book in the AdMech Codex. It's called Scutari. And then everything else, I don't even know why it's there. There is no purpose. It's rules. The Cult Mechanicus rules are worse. The data sheets are worse. Synergies are worse. Like, everything. They could give Cult Mechanicus 2 major buffs, and it would still be worse than Scutari.
It's payback for the robot spam in 8th with them.
Oh, the Docker
But who was winning
Yeah, the
with that?
Docker bots. Yeah, that's true.
Nobody was winning anything.
It was
like,
the-
sure, if you play on Planet Bowling Ball and your opponent lets you double fire robots into you.
Yeah.
It wasn't even that amazing too, because like Iron Hands was 1,000 times more powerful.
Yeah, with the 2-up Field No Pain and 3-up Invuln, or 3-up Field No Pain on everything, with the aura of like the Chapter Master. Oh.
Good
Oh
old
my
Iron
gosh.
Hands.
And you guys say 6th and 7th edition were Lawless Wastelands. Iron Hands were a monster.
We came up with the most broken build, though. People didn't see that one coming, and then John and I showed up with it with a bunch of other Brohammer guys. And we're like, here's this Leviathan that just wrecks the mirror matchup and is also unkillable.
Yeah, I think what has been the worst balanced codex of 9th Ed? Is it Tyranids? Do we think it's Tyranids of what the worst like on release balances?
I think Tyranids are still broken, so I would say yes.
Yeah, I
Tyranids
think
got hit really hard with both points increases and changes to their rules, and they're still, in my opinion, the
monster.
strongest army in the game. The only thing that's keeping them down from completely dominating events is the fact that their secondaries are actually weak. If they
Yes.
had middle tier secondaries, they would be actually crushing the scene still. I mean, they have like a 60% win rate, so they're doing very well, but it would be a lot higher if they had amazing secondaries, or even just good ones.
So I have a few topics I want to come back to, but this leads into a really good one that I like talking about. How do you feel about every army getting access to pick 3 secondaries from their faction, we'll say? Like, you know how sisters can take 3 secondaries now that are sister specific. Do you like that change? Do you kind of wish it would be reverted? Or what? How do you feel overall about this? Do you think it's harder to balance the game? Easier?
I want there to be it's tough. I think I want the game as a whole to have a lot of diversity in choices. And so having access to taking multiple faction secondaries plus the generic ones gives most factions a decent amount of flexibility. Unfortunately, the rebalancing of the faction-specific secondaries was not done with enough concentration or whatever.
Forethought, yeah.
Yeah, the playtesting, really. So the problem is that you have factions like Sisters and Necrons that have just an absurd secondary game, and then you have AdMech, which is struggling to even get, half of your secondary points. So I would have liked a little more balance between them. I think in my opinion, secondaries should be mostly, you should be aiming for that 10 to 12 point category. 15 should be just very difficult. That's you just either severely outplay your opponent or the matchup is just, the list matchup is horrendously in your favor. You shouldn't reliably get 15s against most factions in the game. That just seems a little silly. So I'd like the secondaries to be balanced a little bit more, especially around like a 10 point is what you're realistically going to get. 12 if you're doing really well. 15 should be very difficult. I think the fact that there are secondaries where it's really hard to get 5 points, and there's secondaries where you can just, hey, Treasures of the Aeon, baby, 15 points, write it in right now. Doesn't matter what happens in this game.
What is the name of the... Oh, sorry.
That doesn't make much sense to me. What's that?
What is the Necrons having the secondary that's strictly better than Drukhari's is still blasphemy.
Purge the Vermin.
Yeah, Purge the Vermin. Oh.
Drukhari as a codex is stronger than Necrons. Advancing
You're
Charge
right.
Army-wide is amazing.
Yes.
Drukhari has gotten several nerfs.
They're still good. They're still up there.
They're still a solid, middle faction. Necrons have a horrendous codex. It is the worst that was released this edition. And they are now propped up by secondaries and core on everything.
Core on everything.
Including the Silent King.
The Silent King.
Which I did not expect. So they're propped up. If you just take away their secondaries and give them the old versions, they're still a mid-tier to worse, below mid-tier faction.
That's fair.
So it's because their reliable shooting is basically a destroyer unit that you spend all your CP on. Outside of that, their shooting is quite terrible.
So this is where the thought of this question came up, that yes, this is the way they balance it. They gave them insane secondaries and then gave them like buffs like core and stuff to the secondaries, or not core to the secondaries, but core to all of the units in the faction. That was their way of buffing it. But do you think it's too complicated for them to buff, or do you think that they could get it right if they, with just a little bit tweaking to the current secondaries?
I would reduce the power of the secondaries and buff the Necron specific rules even further. In particular, reanimation for multi-wound models should be stronger. Because it's completely unreliable. You basically, throughout the game, are going to get 1 or 2 models, unless you run the 9-man Scarab units, which I encouraged Jack to do, and it really worked. Because they're awesome in the mirror matchup and against Mortal Wound spam. So with them and a reanimator, you actually do get a lot of value out of multi-wound reanimations, but that's the exception. Pretty much everything else, it's so hard to get reanimations off. Because your smart opponents will just chip off 1-2 models at a time, and you're just not reanimating with them. So I just like to revisit some of the Necron specific rules. Also, all the Arcana are complete trash. They should be relooked at.
Yes.
And honestly, if they were all like 3 to 5 points, you still would barely see most of them.
Yes. They are... Necrons...
Dynasties too. The Dynasties is a huge problem. It's basically custom Dynasty right now. And there should be, you should have at least 3 reliable builds in a competitive codex. There should be 3 different variants that are, quite different that you can, run and do consistently well at a tournament. And Necrons have basically 1. Novak is, is worse, but not the end of the world. And then below that, like things like Zerakin and
fall off hard.
They all need to be buffed. They need to be buffed significantly.
Yeah,
I would prefer seeing that. Like I said, make the Necron rules feel more valuable and worthwhile to run. There's more diversity in Necron builds.
Yes, I totally agree. I wish there was more, because it seems like OBSEC and the 6-inch move is just the staple that they've been running with since the start of the edition.
I ran Novak for a while because it was, in my opinion, stronger. Because the killing power was greater. But now with the new secondaries, where you just have to survive for long enough to score your points, OBSEC synergizes so well with that it's a no-brainer to run it.
Yes, agreed. The disparity between, like, I feel like the game has totally shifted to, before it was like you could bring in a list and try to like knock your opponent down with just like weight of stats and not really play the mission, or like play very minimally into the secondaries, like Stranglehold and stuff, and just like kind of crush through your opponent. Now you can't just do that. You have to play the secondaries or you're going to lose, which I do enjoy. I do enjoy that style, that like you can win the game through secondaries. But some of the armies
is totally more interactive than
it is much more interactive than it used to be. Especially back in 6th and 7th, when you just didn't have anything. I played War Machine for a long time, which had scenarios and stuff. But 6th and 7th, you basically didn't have scenarios. It was basically killing each other, which was something I did not love.
Who's going to survive?
Yeah, who's going to survive? The relic. You pick up this relic. If you're holding it in the game, you win the game. Like, oh, wow. Fun, interactive gameplay.
the mission design really has come a long way, mostly
Yes.
with, Mike Brand and the team he's put together. So they've done really well on the missions. The balancing between factions is just always going to be a consistent problem until there's a really robust playtesting and quality control process.
Yes, which is I think we're going to see reforms in the next year or so with that program.
They're making steps every single time.
Yes.
Consistent balance updates, re-looking at the faction secondaries, which they didn't previously do. All that is very, very useful. It's just, getting it right, because there's so many factions, there's so many rules in the game. It requires a fully paid team that's operating in Games Workshop to actually do this. And once they make that a priority, as this is something that the company really values and we're going to put money towards it, they're going to be in an amazing spot with the rules, and that's going to help with the model sales, because when you don't have armies having half their roster sitting on shelves the entire edition because they're completely useless, you're just going to have more sales. When there's 3 different viable builds and your build is going to change based on the local meta, you want to have all 3 builds accessible.
Agreed.
It's a no-brainer for me. I don't understand.
I also feel like at the start of the edition, more so, or maybe not the start of the edition, Nephilim around that area, or sorry, not Nephilim, Knockmoon, and a little bit before that, we were definitely seeing a rise in lists that weren't really running triple 3-ofs of everything that was good, but now I feel like we're slowly returning to that, where we're running into things that are like staple characters with multiple units that are just like, this is the best unit, we're bringing 3 of it. I feel like we're moving towards that direction more and more every time I look in the game balance.
The problem is the points updates that come out. They have been extremely lackluster. Usually, they do amazing work on like 2 or 3 data sheets for a faction, bringing them up. Now you can use Plague Marines, for instance. Awesome unit now for Death Guard.
100%.
Fantastic job with the Plague Marines. It took a while to get there.
Yes.
But they did it. Same thing with a bunch of the Necron data sheets. There's actual value in running things like Tomb Blades now, which you've never seen before.
I used to run 3 max units at the start of the edition because I was having fun. I just owned them.
I ran one myself.
It was so fun.
But that was when the firepower in the game wasn't quite as what it is now.
As crazy as it is now,
then you have tons of useless data sheets that just sit there, like AdMech Cataphrons. How were they not touched?
Oh, the true choice? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like that. There's tons of data sheets in the game that you just never see. And I really like what they did with Necrons, because they took a lot of those data sheets and were just like 3 points off, 3 points off, 3 points off, Lich Guard, Praetorian, stuff you never see. And that wasn't enough to bring them to be awesome. But, maybe the next update it's another 2 points, and then you're like, hey, this is a real consideration. So more of that for every faction would have been much more welcome. Is every single time you want to bring the top units down a bit, and then you want to bring up all those weaker units. Same thing for the Tau book. Things like Ghost Keels, they really need a tune-up.
They really
Whether
do.
it's points decreases or extra rule on top of, something.
The thing I would love to see for them to bring back more unique-looking lists and stuff like that, and maybe stop skewing into units that just got directly cheaper due to points and more efficient point-wise, is see them maybe update like a stratagem for everybody, or introduce a new stratagem for certain factions that are struggling. Or heck, even maybe a new chapter tactic to hold them over, for like a custom.
They kind of do that with the supplements.
They do that. But
like Sisters got those new Bloody Rose stratagems like well after the book came out that are usable, right?
Yeah,
yes.
It's amazing that Bloody Rose got that set of rules.
Yeah, right.
By far the best Sister sub-faction.
You could kind of justify Argent Shroud before, but not anymore.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. I wish we would see more of that stuff. We haven't really seen a lot of that since the Sisters one, I don't believe. I don't think we've seen a supplement update since that. But it's been a few. But that wasn't that long ago. But I feel like the breaks between those and the relevancy they have on the faction. Sisters was the only, like, when the Admex faction came out, it was only like a few months after the Codex. So like, man, 6 Qatari boost. We needed that at that time. Which was great.
I love that boost.
I love that boost. I agree. It's
that is what is holding up AdMech.
It is what's holding up AdMech. But that's what I'm saying. Exactly what I'm saying. But other factions that are struggling that may have needed it more, like AdMech's now.
Totally.
Now that we're looking in the past, AdMech needs it right now. But I feel like there's other factions that could also take advantage of that in the future. Yeah,
Necrons. Could use the Destroyer Cult supplement, but I honestly think get rid of the supplements for a while. Get every Codex out. Get every Codex on a good standing, and then when you need to introduce, they should have a living rule set personally, and make this a subscriber version. It's all online. It can all be changed as needed, so people don't get upset that their books are different than what the actual rules are.
Man, so, have you ever played War Machine?
This is just basics of
I know
a professional game, but So they
Ugh.
can take this from any other example. But you have an online subscriber version. You can change it
Yep.
as needed. And you do all the codexes, relatively balanced between all of them. And then when you wanted new models, which is models drive the rules here, the models drive the sales,
Yes.
you just, boom, you add you can add a new supplement, just add them right to the book. It doesn't make any sense. I know they're married to the publishing, but
Yes. Kill Team
keep
has made
publishing
me
all the Black Library stuff.
Kill
They're
Team has
awesome.
made me very excited for this part of the hobby. They've started introducing like novitiates. They came out at Kill Team and slowly have come out for sisters, and they're now an amazing pick for sisters. When you
there's a
can
crew
squeeze
kill
out the
team.
points. Yeah, I can't wait. My Tau is ready. My body is
I
ready.
want some specialist crew.
Oh yes, I think a lot of people win. I want the Greater Narlock back as well, but that's another story.
They still make it good.
Yeah. But yeah, what have you been working? We've been talking about all the rules and stuff like that, but let's talk about what you've been doing. Have you been doing any hobbying yourself? If you have anything on your mind, anything that you've been working on that's cool that you want people to know about? Is there any plans for future events that you're really excited to attend?
So the next event that I'm attending is the U.S. Open finale.
Yep.
Because I won LVO, I got the first ticket to it, so I will be there. What I'm going to play is kind of going to depend. I imagine we're going to get some sort of balance update in the next month or two, because it's been a while since we got the last one. I'm hoping that one, it does refine the secondaries. They might not go back to them because they might save that for a chapter approved, but I really would like a tone down of a couple ones, or at least a revisit of the factions. Like, I don't think they should take away rules from Necrons. They're finally got some interesting synergies with them. I would rather tone down a couple. Treasure of the Aeon needs to be toned down. That thing is just absurd. And then probably go ahead and edit something about ancient machineries. Although it caps it at 12, so it's not heinous, but it's so easy to score. Maybe do something about that. And then Purge the Vermin. You could take away the deployment one, which would bring it down to about a 10 on average, which I think is perfectly fine. So make those changes to Necrons. Sisters, they either lose Armor of Contempt or they nerf their secondaries. I think their secondaries are fine if they don't have Armor of Contempt, but with Armor of Contempt, it's just too easy to score the points and be too durable. And also, they don't care about Armor. They're one of those factions that doesn't care about Armor of Contempt. Their whole army is AP4 when you run Bloody Rose, excuse me. The one sub-faction that matters. They just wreck Armor of Contempt armies.
Yeah, I've been
Space
playing
Marines,
30 Sacrosaints. So
Space Marines is the faction that you want, that they designed Armor of Contempt to help. It has not helped Space Marines because Space Marines suffer from other Armor of Contempt armies. They just can't beat them. So the rule hasn't worked as intended. It's helped things like specialist armies like Thousand Sons, Death Guard, Sisters, a lot more than actual base Space Marines. They're still struggling. They're down at the bottom.
yes.
So they should really revisit that rule. I don't think it's done as it should be. Either make it only work against certain AP brackets, like AP 1 and 2 it reduces.
Yes.
Or make it not stack with cover. There's something to do with it, and then give Space Marines extra stuff, like Necron Scott.
These are all
Space
things I
Marines
was hoping that would be addressed when I first saw Armor Contempt. I was hoping they would say something about because the cover with against any AP1 they're 2-up save on Space Marines, which is just kind of like eye roll. Like, what are these guns supposed to do? Like a Marine in cover is just like obnoxiously hard to kill with like it made like the heavy. It made so many options obsolete as well.
Exactly, especially the early codexes, which were mostly AP1 and AP2. AdMech is suffering from this too because it's mostly AP1 and 2. Exactly.
Drukari have some AP, but not more than 3 really. It's very small.
So I don't think the rule is. I think the rule is not doing what it was supposed to do, so they should revisit it. And I think Marines do need serious buffs. I would first of all give all of their. I would do what they did for Necrons and give all the Marine vehicles core, because
I love
Marines
that.
should have the flexibility. Now I know they didn't like a bunch of vehicles sitting around, the characters all game, but the Marines are struggling.
There's a reason we see Redemptor Dreadnoughts and not anything else. When we occasionally we see Redemptor Dreadnoughts, but we do see them like more than the rest.
It's not like the Marine vehicles are that cheap. They're still pretty darn pricey, especially because of the new modern power of ranged firepower. So something like that, and then I'd give them some sort of interesting, unique rule that fits with Space Marine flexibility. Maybe revisit doctrines as a whole. Maybe create like 2 new ones that can help Space Marines, and you can switch between them. Give them more flexibility. Like Space Marines,
I think the doctrine system needs to be readdressed. I think that one needs to be revamped as well.
Point.
Yeah, it's good. Don't get me wrong. It's still a very good mechanic, but for Marines specifically, they just need more help than.
Yeah, I would probably do it where there's like you add in like 1 or 2 new ones that are going to help Marines, and then you get to pick from any of them at the start of a battle round, and then you can only do the same one twice max or something.
Yeah, like Death Watch kind of have something similar to that, where it's like pick 1, pick 2, pick 3.
Death Watch need a lot of help. They are struggling.
Yeah, they were doing good for a little bit there with the.
They suffer from Armor of Contempt. They're all
they do suffer from Armor.
AP1 and
Yeah,
AP2.
yeah, that
it's like the rule that's designed to help Space Marines is
it just hurts them as well.
faction.
Well, it's also because Space Marines are so popular as a faction that like.
Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah, we just kind of like we go to the mirror, we do nothing to each other. Who has the better secondaries wins sometimes. Like that. I really do hope that some of them get readdressed. The White Scars secondary versus, I believe it's the...
Yeah, the White Scars one is actually good.
The White Scars one is actually good. But, like, the Raven Guard one, I think, is, like, terrible, if I remember correctly. It's, like, capped at 12 and is, like, hard to do anyways. Then you look at the disparity between these armies. They're the same units, the same everything. They have slightly different checks, but White Scars have a better tactic. So it's just, like, why would I play something else? It's just crazy. Like Blood Angels and stuff have differences, but the smaller chapters that don't have a lot of uniqueness to them, character or relic wise, struggle very hard. Yeah, oh my god, that
is a faction.
That is a faction. I guess it does exist. Same
if
with
they were even
Fist.
semi decent, they would see play because cover is so relevant, and ignoring cover is a good rule.
I thought they'd be good for a moment there, and then I was like, no, it just doesn't matter. You just don't have any AP for it to matter for.
There's just 2-ups everybody's like, I'm taking 2-ups. Cool.
Yeah, or Terminator. There was a big moment there when Terminators were coming back into the fold heavily, where they just brought a bunch of Terminators, sat them in covers, and then shot.
It's also the problem of slow shooting armies just struggle in this edition because it's very terrain heavy, and if you cannot get around the angles to actually shoot people when you need to kill them, your opponent is just dictating the pace of the game. And if they have better secondaries like Necrons or Sisters, you're just gonna win. It doesn't matter what you do. So. This lack of speed in Space Marines is also maybe give them a turn where they can advance and shoot with no penalty.
There we go. That could be a new doctrine.
Something like that. Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah.
Just help their speed. Get them up the board. It's not like they're insanely durable either. Just like let's help Space Marines. I was all about helping Necrons for a while. They got the help that they needed. I'd like to see some tweaks to their rules because, like I said, the secondaries are just dumb. That shouldn't be a thing. But I also think there's some of the data sheets and synergies in that book, like Canoptic Doomstalkers, which have gotten 0 love, are still complete garbage. And there are a bunch of other data sheets that are as well.
The Doomsday
and also there's a
art,
bunch of dynasties. So like let's help the struggling stuff. And then for armies that are in a decent spot, let's try and buff their sub-factions that aren't, particularly interesting. Like that, let's go that direction. But
I totally agree.
They can only do so much. I understand that.
I will say I would love to see the lower. It seems like they're on the right track with Necrons, but it's taken so long to get here. It's like
that was the frustration. That Sisters got massive buffs before Necrons, and the
constantly.
Sisters Codex and Bloody Rose supplement are so much more powerful than Necrons.
They got Bloody Rose.
Is insane.
They got AOC. They got secondaries. Buffs. Yeah, they got like 3 straight buffs in a row, and that was enough to put them literally almost at the top of A, if not S. I don't think Sisters are S, but I'm also biased, so take that with a grain of salt, everybody.
They're close behind. I think they have a couple matchups that are particularly difficult. Specifically Tau with 2 bombers. Tau is a very difficult matchup for good Sisters because they can actually just do a horrendous alpha strike on them, and that's hard to recover from for Sisters. A double Catan is not easy to deal with, and Necrons in general, because they can keep up with their scoring. But Sisters do have better killing power than Necrons.
I've been
tricky matchup.
The list I've been struggling with Tau is I had my friend Proxy. It's the one with the 3 aspect warriors, the Banshee, the Scorpion, and the or not Scorpion. Scorpion?
Yeah, the Scorpions are good.
Scorpion, and then Baharoth. And then they just like stand them back up at the end of every turn you face. It's just like, you can't alpha strike them. You literally cannot alpha strike them in a 1-phase army. Like
I'll tell you what, if you're in the war room, you can watch a game I played against Brad Chester. I'll show you.
I'll have to go watch it.
Alpha strike the Craft Worlds. I almost broke his morale in turn 1.
Oh no!
But he recovered.
This actually also reminds me of how terrible the secondary. Grey Knights don't have terrible secondaries, but they have like very weird ones to synergize with for their Codex. I wish they would.
The problem with Grey Knights is their psychic phase is inconsistent. Yes. I would just give them +1 to cast, just army wide +1 to cast, or make it a tide. I don't care.
Yep.
Just boom, +1 to cast. They need to be more consistent in their psychic phase. This is a Psyker army, the elite of
The elite Psyker army. Yes.
and it's inconsistent. You can barely get half your powers off. It's silly. And
Yeah,
then
they're also on 7s, unlike most of them.
they designed the army to have empiric amplification on your opponent. And
Yep.
that power is one that I almost never get off in any single game. It's just absolutely
Yes.
silly. I can barely get Gate Infinity off, let alone without spending CP.
Yes.
So give them more reliable ways to cast. Awesome. And then their shooting is completely garbage. They need to go back to the old version of buffing the psi weapons because once again, like I said, they designed it as if you have empiric amplification. It's just so unrealistic at 12-inch range. You can make it,
especially
18,
since there's like one way to cast it twice, but it's only locked to one cast, correct? Because it's part of the
exactly.
Yeah,
I was going to get there. Make the dominance discipline. You can cast multiple each turn, and then finally the shooting. Buff the Tide of Convergence. I know it's one of the best ones, so it's going to see more play with this. But I would also buff the shooting with Tide of Convergence.
Well,
so that
maybe
the guns
not.
Actually matter.
Maybe not
guns are
Vortex of
terrible.
Doom. Well, maybe let's not let everybody cast Vortex of Doom.
I mean, still, it's only coming from your characters.
That's fair. That's
Grey
fair.
Knights only have 2 or 3 characters. I think it would be totally reasonable, frankly. But
okay, I could see it. I could see
they're
it.
sitting at a 39% win rate. I love the
true.
faction, so I would. If they make the psychic phase more consistent, and they buff the shooting, Grey Knights will be in a decent spot.
Gotcha. I think I agree. Grey Knights, really don't want to go on a tangent here about Grey Knights, but I've got a new list. It's the 30 Purifiers, Combat Squad, and Rhinos, so you can redeploy them, and then you just like run out of the Rhinos and you blast off.
Instead of Purifiers, I've been running the 3-man Paladins to get access to Purifying Flame on them, and Armored Resilience, so it's a lot more durable.
Armored Resilience is very good.
Yeah, but you can go ahead and cast Purifying Flame instead on them, and they're basically like little batteries. They don't get the +1 to cast Purifying Flame, but that's totally okay because they have that extra defense, and they also hit way harder in combat.
Yes.
So I've been trying that to get more Mortals because that's basically what Grey Knights do best right now.
I was doing that for a while, and then my buddy hit me with the Melee Tyrant that ignores like all Fiona Pains, does mortals and stuff. And
I said, Tyranids are broken.
He came in, killed 5 Terminators, ran, killed 5 Terminators, ran, killed 5 Terminators, ran, and I was like,
Overrun is silly, particularly on the Tyrant, but Reaper of Obliterax is the best relic in the game. That thing is absolutely absurd.
Yes.
How is the Mortals uncapped, first of all, and how is it linked to just wounding? Utterly silly.
Yeah, I don't know.
I cannot understand how they would be like, here's a good relic. Okay, good relic goes on a fast, speedy thing. Let's go ahead and make it do mortals and ignore feel no pains and face caps. Let's just give it everything. Yeah, it cuts through it like, you look at the other relics and they're all reasonable, and then you're like, what is this?
So Tal has a Warlord trait for Farsight to ignore like the phase cap and feel no pains and all of that.
Master Killing Blow.
Yeah, only on 6s though, if I'm not mistaken.
No, the 6s are the extra AP.
Okay, the 6s are the extra AP.
All of
the shots. Okay, all their things ignore face cap, and then we have a gun that does it, the burst cannon, which is brought in a lot of lists and stuff. But it's like these are our 2 access. We look at Reaper of Obliterax, we're like, just does mortals, can't be prevented. Nothing stops this.
Master of the Killing Blow is actually good if the thing was that Tau, if they split the power of Tau's Warlord traits and relics between the 2 of those things, it would be fine. But instead, they put all the power on the Warlord traits and none of it in the relics, and so you buy 3 Warlord traits, and you're like, man, if I could just double a Warlord trait or even get
they gave us one good relic. It's called the Humble Staff.
Yeah, but Ethereals are not that good. So
yeah, that's fair. Not for 80 points anymore.
And the Hunter's Plate wasn't too bad, right? The Bagel.
It's okay, but it's basically just an extra tool in case you play your commanders poorly.
Fair.
And it's very good on the Enforcer because you could actually just send him up and he will kill a lot of stuff. Like
that's
I've
what
had
I
him
ran
kill
mine
Phoenix
as.
Lords. Yeah, it is a solid relic, but the problem is it's not anywhere near the power of the Warlord traits, which are buffing giant crisis units.
For sure. We were doing our stream the other night, and Garrett asked what our favorite Warlord traits was, and I was like, Precision of the Hunter, because it's just stupid good.
It's so fun.
Like, in any other army, like full rerolls to hit and wound all the time. Like, oh, okay, can I have that on my demons? No, like it's just so good.
It is awesome. It is an awesome Warlord trait.
Speaking of which, what is your favorite Warlord trait in the game?
Favorite Warlord trait in the game? I would personally go with Verse of Vengeance. That's the Agrippina specific one. It allows shoot and fight on death. Why I love it is because it is one of the ways that AdMech can act out of phase, and on top, so it's a really good way to deal with phase cap units. This
It's
is how
also
I
one of
beat
the
Catan at
strongest things you can
WTC.
do.
Exactly.
Out of
Shoot on death
action?
with a
Oh.
20 Rangers, that's amazingly effective. It's only on 4-ups, it's not automatic, but still, you get all the buffs that you put on them when you do it. So this is how I was able to deal with Catan at WTC. And then the other thing is it lets your units act more than once, and that's what AdMech needs right now. They have less units than your opponent does, and their units are relatively expensive and require command points to really function, and as well as like a whole
Not to
swap
mention
of
pre-game.
warlord traits and yeah, exactly, command phase buffs. You need all of that. So when they have all that and they get to act twice, you actually get the efficiency out of these units. So I really love that warlord trait. I think it's super undervalued, and it's a big part of why I did so well with Agrippina.
One of the strategies I've been using constantly in my list recently is the Sisters Fire on Death on a 4+.
Yep.
Yeah,
John uses it all the time.
Yeah, it's so good. And then
You
you
save CP for that.
Yeah, I agree. It's so powerful. Against my Custodes matchup, he just like shot and killed like 4 of my. I only brought 5-man squads, which I realized was a terrible mistake because I think I'm seeing the light of the 10-mans.
You gotta do the 10-mans. That's why you pull the Retributors, you shoot them on death, and then you pull you heal the multi-meltas back into the unit, and you do it again.
Yes, and then you fire them again. Exactly.
That's the sauce.
Yeah, I was doing that, but with only they somehow managed to not. I kept leaving the sergeant, which is not normally what I do. I kept leaving the sergeant so they wouldn't kill her off because they'd like I'd like roll my save, see like get down to low, and I'd be like, it's just better to leave the sergeant. They won't kill her. They won't care about her. She'll be hidden behind a rock or something uncover. And then I'd get to revive like 2 or 3 during my game every turn, and I was just getting to. Oh, it was so strong.
The 10-mans are a huge part of why John's list is quite a bit scarier than most Sisters lists.
Yes. I was running 30 Sacker Saints, and I can tell you we don't need Armor Contempt. It's a lot of fun just running 30 sacks up the board with just like...
They're still good. Like, they went down in points. They're
14
awesome.
points a model for a 2-up, 4-up? Sign me up.
There's some units in the game that are just silly. Repentia are just absurdly cheap, too. There's most of the Sister stuff.
Most of the Sister stuff is unbelievably cheap and durable.
What if we're one of the hardest hitting units in the game and we're also one of the cheapest?
Yes.
And fight on death, so we get to swing no matter what.
All the fight on death stuff.
They got rid of most of fight on death, like early in the edition, compared to 8th edition, and now it's like the Dark Harlequins got it, but then they nerfed it. The
Chaos got it.
Creations of Bile have it, and probably gonna get nerfed because it has like a 60+% win rate.
It's so good.
It's really good.
It's
You're like,
really
hey,
good.
I'm a melee army and I need to kill you in melee. Awesome.
I think Votan just got one as well. I don't know how much you're allowed to talk about Votan. I guess we won't bring it up too much. But
I have not read all the leaks because honestly, I just wait till the rules are out.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. We're supposed to get him soon, though. We got those previews the other night, which is very exciting.
The models look awesome. This is going to be my next army. And,
yep, same.
I can't wait.
Same. But yeah,
it basically looks like Terran StarCraft Marines. Like that's why I'm most excited. I love StarCraft, so I'm painting them as Raiders.
Awesome. I love that. I'm doing my the Garrett special, we call it. All of my armies are painted red and black because I just can't pick another color scheme to paint anymore. I have exactly one army that's not painted red and black, and that's my Death Guard. But literally of my like 12 armies, they're all red and black minus 1.
Yeah, red and black Death Guard might not work. Well, black Death Guard honestly would.
Black with like red cloth, silver embellishments.
Yeah, I honestly could see it.
I could see it. But I did 30K because I was into 30K for a long time as a kid. So I was like, I want to paint these 30K. So we did the old classic tan. But yeah, what else is going on? You got anything else exciting you want to talk about? Is there anything you specifically wanted to talk about when you came on here?
Well, what just happened this weekend was the Nova Open, and Jack Harpster, who just won the Nova Open for the first time, so congratulations to Mr. Jack. He took Necrons last minute, and let me tell you how this went down. So he's going through last week. He's completely changing armies left and right. He was on Tau for a while, played it at WTC, enjoyed it. He played it earlier in the year too. I designed a list for him, and then he took that to the Cherokee Open and won it. So he's done very well with Tau, and the problem is that he's very nervous about playing against Necrons on GW terrain with Tau, which understandable. It's very easy for them to jump OBSEC back and forth. So he's like, all right, what could I run? Well, I was running Grey Knight Terminators on some of the streams, and he was like, he likes Grey Knights too. He was like, I'm excited about this. Let me put it on the table a couple times. And then I gave him my Necron list, and then he got smashed up by the Necrons. So he was like, all right, I can't do Grey Knights. All right, is it back to Tau? Should I take Custodes? Should I take any of the other factions that I like? Blood Angels, Imperial Knights. And so it was me, him, and John. We end up rolling for it to see what he's going to play.
Oh my god.
And we narrowed it down to Tau or Necrons on a 4-up, and I got to roll the dice. Of course, it was a 4-up. Boom, Necrons. So instantly he's like, all right, what's going to be the list? And then I'm like, all right, here's the baseline of my list. And he's like, all right, I need more than this amount of CP. So I know you're going to be disappointed, but we got to run the Immortals. And I'm like, all right, totally. I have run the Immortals in the past. I hate them. I despise them. They're garbage for 80 points, but they let you get CP.
They do.
He throws the Immortals in, basically takes the rest of the list, and guess what? He played the heck out of it over the course of the 9 games, went 9-0 at Nova, and really proud of him. It was great seeing my Silent King on the table. And all the comments, I saw tons of them about like, hey, great paint job on those Necrons. I'm like, yeah.
So,
Jack is undefeated running my armies on streams at Super Majors.
Yeah.
It's a good luck charm.
Yeah, it really is.
You can't beat him, join him,
I bless the army.
So I don't know how to compliment your list building. It's very it's always different. You're always doing different things. How do you what compels you to build these interesting lists that are different than everybody else is running? What like makes your lists? Are you just like, this looks like fun, this looks like it can be crazy, and just go for it? Because that seems like what you do. You don't. People don't test in the same way you test. It feels like, or at least like because it sounds like a lot of your plans are last minute, or not a lot of your plans are last minute, but it seems like you come up with these like stroke of genius ideas and they just work.
I think really deeply about this. I go through tons of variations, and usually it comes down to I have a core that I really like, and then what those options are going to change based on the meta I'm expecting, the players that I expect to be there, what lists I think they're going to be running, what the terrain format's going to be. So for AdMech, I've been going through a lot of different variations for WTC on the Agrippina list, and played a game against Harlequins on the Worm stream, ended up losing that one, and I was like, I should be favored in this matchup, in my opinion. Even though Harlequins have way better secondaries, their damage output is not great into AdMech, and I should be able to force the pressure. So what went wrong? I couldn't consistently kill the boats, and once the boats are dead, all the troops instantly die to Rangers, Vanguard, whatever it is, or Ruststalkers. So I was like, what can I get in there that kills boats? Well, Iron Striders, but the autocannon version, the ones you don't see. And you don't see them because they're AP1 natively, but in Agrippina in half range, 24 inches, and this is a unit that could potentially move 19 inches and get within half range, it's AP2. And you can make them ignore cover with a particular Holy Order advanced protocol. I really did not do that very much, but there are times where you actually would use it if you're not really taking too much return fire. So this unit, actually, we played a game then off stream where I ran this unit, and Nick gave up at the bottom of turn 2 because he was like, this is impossible. So I was like, well, I played it into a couple other matchups. I played into Necrons, and that's how I knew that this was going to be the sauce, and I was able to play into Necrons, which is an army that, like, if you don't do anything, is going to score 100 points. And AdMech is a faction that if you try really, really hard and sweat it out, you're going to get like 80, 85 points. So you need to do something dramatic to beat Necrons. And I beat 2 Necron players.
Oh, wow.
And both of them were relatively close games because it's hard to get a huge differential against them. But I did it by putting a lot of aggressive pressure on there, and then using the strat when you charge in Iron Striders, they can do mortals on a 2-up. And so that's how you get around the phase cap, is you whittle them down in shooting, and then you're able to get in there, and you either charge Ruststalkers, so you're going to do some combat to help finish it off with the mortals in the charge phase. So I had this tool, and on top of that, I also had the shoot on death. And so I made units very difficult to engage, especially my OBSEC, because I would shoot on death, take the 3 wounds off the katana, and then finish them off. So I played a lot of games again. I play mostly my games into tough matchups. I'm like, what are the resources and the tools that are going to help me actually give me a game? Not necessarily that I have a guaranteed win against them, but that are going to give me the tools that I could in that matchup. And then the other thing I like building in is just tools that people are unfamiliar with. I don't do gotchas or anything. I explain, here's what the rule, here's how it works, here's what I'm going to do in the game. But playing against it is very unique. So things like the Agrippina shoot on death, people have to play very carefully around that because, so you're a Necron player, you want to shoot my Ranger unit because it's obsecting the objectives, preventing you from doing stuff. and you still want to take control of the objective, so you're throwing like 3 scarabs out there or 3 tomb blades. If you actually damage that unit, I am going to shoot on death and then kill your unit that wants to get Treasures of the Aeon or has started the Ancient Machineries action. So is the same for a lot of other armies. Drukhari army that one, or this came up in Sisters. They wanted to send a cheap unit to charge into my unit because they have to soak Overwatch. Agrippina has 5-up Overwatch. You don't want to take 40 shots on 5-ups with the rerolls and everything. So charge in a sacrificial unit, like 2 Crusaders. Well, guess what? When they started to shoot at the unit to try and whittle it down, I then just killed the 2 Crusaders, and now the Repentia that wanted to charge in are like, oh god, 5-up Overwatch, we're dead too, and this whole plan didn't work, he's going to get a 12 on primary. Stuff like that. Just set up difficult, problematic situations for your opponent where they have to play very carefully to get around it. I like tools like that. So that's why I ran stuff like... I ran a lot of different AdMech builds. I pretty much don't run the same exact thing in multiple tournaments. I come up with a build that
I loved your WTC list. The one with the what was it? Was it 2 5-man Strider Breach or 2 6-man Striders?
2 5-man.
2 5. I thought it was 2 5.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my gosh. I have like 9 right now, and I'm like, I have to get the last one so I can build an autocannon unit. Oh my gosh.
The autocannons are incredible. By far the MVP. The Rangers shoot and fight on death was awesome.
Oh,
I saw it in one of your War Room videos. You said that you also will play full games against yourself, right? And set up your opponents that you think you have bad matchups into.
Yeah, sometimes I'll just put it on the table and kind of play out the first couple turns and just see how it works. Especially just mastering the deployment in different matchups and on different missions. So making sure that when I go into a game, it's just the deployment is something that can take a lot of people extra time, and they can waste a lot of time in deployment, even though it's very important. And then I'm just like, bam, 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 back to you, back to you, back to you, back to you. And it puts a lot of pressure on the other opponent to think quick.
Well, we know you're a busy man. Sorry, I'll let you go ahead and speak, but we are. I don't want to take up too much of his time because we know we're on a little bit of a time crunch tonight.
I was gonna say it's like the Queen's Gambit where she's playing against herself on the roof when she's trying to sleep. She's playing games against himself. That's all. Go ahead.
Yeah, but that's what I do in list design. Is I really think deeply about like what are the problematic matchups, what are the problem units, and what are the tools I could add that could help against this. And if you go into that type of mindset to create your list, you'll do much better. And I always tailor it for the meta that I expect there. And usually it's about the top players. I don't really bring this is going to be good into every single list in the game. I'm going to bring a list that I can play into every single list, but that's going to be good into the list that I expect at the top of the meta.
Fair. Well, thank you so much. Like I said, again, we're on a little bit of a time crunch, but thank you so much for joining. It was an awesome hearing your feedback on a lot of these different issues and things going on in the community and all the changes. And we can't wait to see you at future tournaments.
Thanks so much for having me. And as soon as you get the episode up, go ahead and send that over, and I'll get it up on our social media.
Yeah, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Art of War and join their membership.